All right, here we are for another drawing video on Snarly Illustration. I'm joined here today by my son, Joshua. Joshua, say hello.
Hi, hello.
Hello, hello. We are drawing today a picture of Vai Sikahema, and you might not know who that is. I'm just really quickly going to draw a little thumbnail sketch here in the corner. I'm just exploring some shapes as I observe some things on Vai's face. Got kind of a square head. And while we're drawing, Joshua is going to be adding some commentary. He's going to be working on one of these drawings himself. And we'll see where that goes. But why don't you tell everyone who Vai Sikahema is, Joshua?
So, Vai Sikahema, he went to BYU College, and he was on their football team, and he wasn't put in too much, and he didn't appreciate that because he thought that he wasn't put in that much just because he wasn't given a spot to be showing how good he was. So when kickoff happened, like when they kicked the ball
like a
across,
punt.
a punt across somewhere like that, instead of leaving the ball like the coaches told him to, one time he just caught it and he made a touchdown. And he did that like 6 times.
Yeah. So instead of just like catching the ball and stopping, he decided to run, right?
Yeah.
So that was his jam.
He was doing that so he would get put in more, but what he didn't think was happening is scouts were seeing him. And so they saw him and he got put into the NFL. He played for the Cardinals a time, Green Bay Packers, and then when he retired...
He's playing for the Eagles, right?
Yeah, he played for the Eagles too. And when he retired, he's like, oh, I'm going to get into boxing. I want to get into boxing.
No, hold on. That's backwards. So he got into broadcasting after his football career. I think his boxing came a little earlier, much earlier, and that prepared him for his football career. So let's pause on the storytelling just a little bit. Tell me what you think about this setup of his face here. I'm just drawing in lines, some shapes, just to kind of like figure out like where I want to emphasize. He's got a nice big smile.
Happy guy.
Yeah, happy guy. Here I'm drawing some eyes. Which the eyes are kind of just like little tiny slits. Yeah. So, and when you draw eyes, like you gotta make sure that, you're not just drawing like almond shapes, right?
It looks like around the eyes, there's like, it looks kind of like a cheetah or like a cougar type thing.
Oh, some lines?
Yeah, lines cut by his eyes.
Yeah, and some of those lines are just gonna help me like connect kind of a flow in the face. What I'm doing right now is I'm doing some light drawing, and then later we'll go in there with some of the final strokes. So yeah, we're just drawing a super happy guy. He's Tongan. He was the first Tongan to ever make it into the NFL, we discovered, right? And then after that he became a broadcaster. But you'd mentioned boxing. Boxing was kind of an interesting part because I think he was training to be a boxer. But the way I've heard him tell his stories, he was training to be a boxer, but there wasn't a lot of opportunity when he came to America to necessarily do the boxing that he wanted. But he noticed that all the girls at his high school went out with football players, and so he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna go try football." So he did that, and then he went to BYU for college. But we saw something that was pretty cool. He was pretty. He's pretty well known for a boxing match that we watched that didn't take place too long ago. But he was boxing a famous baseball player. Do you remember who that was? Some guy in trucks. He was boxing Jose Canseco, and Jose Canseco was famous for using steroids, right? So who knows if he was using steroids when they did their boxing match, but he was massive. Jose Canseco is much bigger, and he has a much longer reach, and he challenged Vai Sikahema to kind of a charity boxing match, and Vai Sikahema was like, I'm going to take this guy down. Boy, he sure did. You can watch that on YouTube, right? Vai Vai Sikahema take down the big, massive Jose Canseco. It's kind of like a David and Goliath.
And it was like in 1 minute or something.
Yeah. Pretty quick. So anyway, back to the drawing here. I'm just drawing in these lines that kind of form the mouth area.
Cheeks.
Yeah, so whenever you have a smile, that doesn't just affect like the teeth and everything in that area. Like everything kind of pushes out. Okay, so you have to kind of think, well, what are these lines going to be like if the smile muscles are pushing out into the cheek area and stuff like that. So, and we'll kind of go in here and draw just some clothing. Vai Sikahema is a leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we've heard him speak in General Conference and some other places, and so we're going to draw him just as he often appears now in a suit and tie, which was not the case when he was playing football. Obviously he was playing in his football uniforms. We'll show some pictures of his football cards here as well.
What's
Kind of get an idea for what he looked like then. Yeah.
What's the first facial feature you usually do?
So that's a good question. The first one that I usually do is I try to figure out like what the shape of the head is, and that's why I started drawing this little area to the left, just like a tiny little thumbnail of like, hey, I want this to be kind of boxy. So his head area is kind of like a box with rounded corners, right? And then I just divide it up. So you've got these lines like in the middle and then like through the center. Divide that up and kind of figure out where the line of eyes is going to go. And I do that really light. You can see right now my strokes are a little darker, where the like the dark lines of the face are. And so yeah, and I'm trying to figure out just kind of the outer edge of the face on both sides. He's kind of got this really thick neck, and so we'll make sure that that's playing out in the sketch here, and just drop in a little bit of strokes for the color that we'll ultimately put in his clothing there. So, and now these lines, like everyone has them, like when you smile, these lines from the cheeks, on him they are pretty dark. You see in the reference image that they are pretty prominent. So anything that's dark or prominent in the reference image, we'll want to make sure that that is definitely dark in a character sketch, which sometimes that's a thicker line, sometimes it's like some cross-hatching lines, maybe it's the color application. It all depends on what your final product is going to look like. Here I'm going to drop back the color. Once I'm satisfied with this original sketch, I drop back the color of that to make those lines even lighter, and then on top of that I'm going to put in kind of my final dark line. Okay, so anytime you're drawing, I always tell you to draw really, really light, and then when you're satisfied with what you have, then go in there and drop in the dark color. And for whatever reason, I don't know, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I always start right at the bridge of the nose when I start doing my darker color, and I just kind of work outward from there. So I'll start at the bridge of the nose, I'll work with the eyebrows, and then try to figure out the eyes. I feel like I really struggle with the eyes myself. Putting them in so that they are looking like they're coordinated as far as where they're looking. You don't want a person to look cross-eyed, right? Or that they're looking to the right or left when they're supposed to be looking forward. And then you see on the outside you've got some thicker strokes, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't have the variation of strokes, sometimes your drawing can look pretty flat, or much more flat than you might want it to. And these thicker lines, especially around the eyes, are gonna kind of help create some shadowing.
Isn't there like a name for a certain type of like drawing where you spotlight like kind of a big feature?
Like a caricature?
Yeah.
So if you're doing a caricature, and maybe you want to highlight like the person's nose. Let's say it's a giant nose or something like that. Yeah, most definitely. With this one in particular, I think the highlight that I'm choosing to emphasize is more like the smile. He's got kind of a big bottom lip. He's got really nice, friendly eyes, like Tongans do. So I want to make sure that they look really nice and friendly. They're kind of closed, like almost like little slits, right? And the reason is because like his smile is just pushing upward and kind of closing those eyes a little bit. I think that's adding to like the friendliness of this look.
That's a good smile.
Yeah. You'll notice on both sides of the teeth, there's just like these dark shadows. Anytime you see I'm coloring it in right here, and every time you see someone smile, look at the corners of their mouth, and you'll see like sometimes there's a lot of like dark, and sometimes there's just very little. But those dark spaces really, I find, help define what the person looks like. And especially when you're trying to draw something that you want people to recognize, like a famous personality, because that's one of the key areas that I always focus on. Here we'll just drop in a couple of lines to indicate color in the clothing here, in the suit. He's got a nice suit on. And we'll darken that up just a little bit. Round that just a little bit since it's a shoulder. And underneath everyone's chin is always a shadow. So I always either dark underline there or just some hash marks. Also in the ear is usually a pretty obvious place where there's going to be some shadows. With his hair is really interesting. Now his hair is all kind of combed back. So we'll just key in some of these lines, and then we'll figure out how to create some depth in the hair with additional lines that we'll put. But let's just finish up kind of the forehead area here. It's got these cool shapes that kind of envelop like the eyebrow area.
Under the nose, you put a shadow for like the little space there too.
That's right, yeah. And he doesn't, when he smiles big, he doesn't really have a top lip. It kind of gets folded under, and you just see his teeth, which is kind of an interesting characteristic, I think. So this side, you don't really get to see the ear a ton, but we'll just put tiny shapes there. How's it looking to you?
It's looking like Vai Sikahema.
Yeah, okay. So this is where we'll put in some more like hair, and I want it to look darker, kind of at the top. He's got some gray in there, and so we'll factor that in when we're adding some of the tonal color.
His eye color isn't super defined.
There's not like a shadow around it.
No, it's kind of just like a pupil.
So, are you talking about like eye color, like green eyes, blue eyes, or just like
he has
the
brown
the
eyes,
shadowing?
the shade, because like there's darker and lighter colors.
Yeah, we'll get to the eye portion. This is just going to be like a black and white study, so we don't need to get into like the actual color of the eyes. But you're right, there's going to be some shadowing around the eyes that we need to figure out. Like and subscribe if you enjoy our conversations, right, Joshua?
Oh yeah.
Joshua's going to work on one of these himself. We'll see what he comes up with. I'm super excited to see that. How's it looking? Overall, I think we got his likeness. I think you could probably put that in front of somebody and they'd be like, yeah, I recognize that guy from television in Philadelphia. All right, so this is where it gets kind of crazy. I'm going to just choose this mid-tone gray. It looks purple-ish because the background we've got going on is like this green color.
It looks very purple.
It looks very purple, doesn't it? I don't think it will as we get going on that. It'll kind of transform. But I'm just going to fill in all this area here that we have been sketching. And just get that outline there. And finish up around the hair here. I wanted to say during this video, one of the things that I really loved, and I always remember from one of Vai Sikahema's messages, is when he was talking about training for boxing. He said that from like a very, very young age, like 7 or 8 years old, every single day he would do like dozens and dozens and dozens of push-ups. Like that was just his thing. Like he was going to be a boxer, right? And he was doing push-ups and he was like running 5 miles a day, all this kind of stuff. And so when he got to his high school and he started like, playing with all these other guys, like he shows up and he looks like this little man-child because he's been exercising his whole life and he's been boxing, and he was just that much more developed and stronger. And I think of that all the time, like whenever I decide to that I want to get into a habit, like over time is how it happens, right? Kind of the same thing with drawing. Like you'll try to draw this and you'll be like, oh, that stinks. But like if you practice every day, drawing things, drawing faces, drawing bodies, then you'll get better and better.
I feel like even if it is sloppy, it's the same thing that usually still makes out like what it is usually still right.
Yeah, you can.
You just need to finish your product. Don't stop. Oh, it's horrible.
That's a good point, yeah. What you see here is I've chosen the darker gray, and I'm just multiplying that on top of our gray. So typically what you'll see that initial gray layer, which is like middle gray. And then what I like to say is I like to push in the shadows. So anything that should be shadowy, like under the nose right now, or around these cheek muscles, I push in darker shadows, okay? And that's gonna add the depth, okay? And after you push in the shadows, then what do you think is gonna happen after?
Pop.
Yeah, well then you're gonna pull the highlights. So that first area right there, just the teeth, bright white smile, and then this white collar, we're gonna pull that, okay? So there's just a push and pull. So rather than
it just being a flat like color.
Yeah, rather than being a flat color, or just starting from your lines and just like starting to figure out the shading, I think that half the job is done when you just start with that middle gray and then just start pushing and pulling a little bit. Kind of makes the job easier. So we'll add the white to the eyes, and I'm gonna adjust the transparency on my brush so that it's not like full on white, but then it just adds to the dimension.
When it's not shaded.
Yeah. So let me ask you this: does that still look purple?
No.
It doesn't, right?
It changed.
It's like changed, even though it was the same.
Yeah.
It's crazy, huh?
But
Add some highlights
I feel like
again.
I kind of want to go back and like see where it changed.
See where it was. That was very, very subtle. Add some highlight to where the light's catching just the top of his eyes and his forehead. Just very, very, it's almost like you're carving it out of stone, right? Just very, very subtly, like the dimension appears.
It looks like it too, around the cheek.
Yeah. So, what else do we need? Okay, let's go into the hair. So now my brush is like 100% opacity, and I'm just gonna stroke in some of these gray hairs that he has. And that gives a little bit more form to what his hair really looks like. Kind of highlight, kind of a rim light on the side of his face. Nice detail there. And I'm taking this like really, really prominent white and just kind of almost hashing in some highlights. So we'll do that on the lips so they don't look so like balloony. Have a little bit of texture there on the cheek. If this was an athlete that was like in competition, then we would do the same thing with like beads of sweat all over the face and stuff. Add some highlight to the clothing.
Maybe smiling, but most athletes are very
Right, of course.
If it's like mid-game.
If it's mid-game, yeah, they've got the eye of the tiger or something, right?
That's what it is.
So what do you think? It's looking pretty good. This is obviously just a quick study. If we were gonna publish this somewhere. Maybe there's some other details we'd pay attention to, but I think it's looking pretty good. Do you think Vi would like it?
You should send it to Vi.
Let's see if we can send it to Vi and tag him somehow. Anyway, here is the final product. And Joshua, you want to show us your final product?
Yep.
Put it up there on the screen. There you go. Nice job. Thanks for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you along the drawing process, and encourage you to follow along more. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.